Hello everybody, so today we're going to be talking about Israel, and I would like to unpack a few of the things the Lord has shown me regarding just prophetic insights in terms of watching what's been unfolding and what's important to what the Lord has shown me, not only as a watchman but in relation to Israel as a whole. I tend not to watch all the news, and so I'm very selective of what the Lord leads me to in terms of what he shows me and what comes across my path. And so this specific decode is very specific to the things that the Lord has shown me and the things that he wanted to highlight to me. So the first thing that I'd like to highlight is that this particular war happened on the eve of the Sabbath, on the 6th of October, going into the 7th of October, and we know that the 7th of October was the Sabbath for the Jewish people. They were coming out of celebrating Sukkot, and Sukkot is a festival where they erect tents that are temporary, and it reminds them of their journey in the wilderness. When they were erecting tents and moving through the wilderness. So they celebrate this festival annually and they erect these tents. Now what happened on the eve, just before the war happened, was that there was a strong wind that came throughout all of Israel, and the tents that were erected were all blown down. And this is symbolic. What the Lord was showing me is that this is symbolic of the covering being removed from Israel. And the tent, as you know, the tent is a covering. So this is symbolic of the covering being removed off of Israel to enable war to occur. Because war needs a doorway to happen, right? There is a gate or a portal that needs to open for war to occur. And this was symbolic. When the wind blew the tabernacles down, it was showing that the covering of Israel is coming down. And as you know, the Dome of the Rock did fail, which is a type of a covering for Israel. And so that was the first thing that the Lord showed me. Now, just putting into context the tabernacle, the tent, and Sukkot, we know that in the Old Testament they erected a tabernacle, and the tabernacle was first a tent, and then the second tabernacle was the one that Solomon built in the legacy of David, and that was an actual building, and the third temple will be built in line with prophecy and revelation. We know that Jesus describes himself as a temple, and he also describes the church, the body, as a temple. So we know that we are the temple of God as Christians. We are the temple of God. However, the Jews are waiting to erect the third temple for their perceived Messiah, because they have a veil over their eyes regarding who the Messiah actually is. And the Messiah is Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach. So what the Lord is showing me is that the wind was symbolic of the removing of the covering off of Israel and the removal of the protection of the Dome of the Rock to allow war to enter into that zone. So that's the first thing that the Lord decoded to me. I'll put a tweet up here by a Christian rabbi who lives in Jerusalem and had his tent erected, and he reported on Twitter that the wind had blown down his tabernacle. What was really interesting is that on the 5th of August, I said to everybody that portals are opening and closing, doors are opening and closing. Now, one of those portals obviously is war. That war has started and is occurring in the world. And if you listened to the people who were in Israel, they said that they could feel a darkness, or they could feel a foreboding just before the war actually broke out in Israel. And one of the persons actually said it felt like the gates of hell. Gates, there's that word, portal, gates. And so that was just another confirmation of a word that the Lord had spoken to me, that these portals are opening for specific reasons. Now, what the Lord showed me separately from this, and I've had a vision, an audible vision, where the Lord said to me, 23, 23, 23, 23. And so ever since that vision, the Lord has wanted me to watch out and monitor for the every day on the 23rd. And so I look out for things of significance that have happened on this particular day. And if you follow my ministry on Telegram, you'll know that I post periodically about important events to do with either death or inheritance regarding the 23rd of each month. Now, what's fascinating to me is that on the 23rd of February 2023, Israel was incorporated. The state of Israel was listed on the London House of Companies as a corporation. So Israel becomes a corporation on the 23rd of February 2023. Now, this is a really big deal. Why is this a really big deal? Well, the Lord gave me the first thing is that the Lord gave me a dream regarding a secret meeting of elite Jewish people that were rejoicing over a proportion of the land that they had acquired on the Jubilee. And as you can see from this document that I'm putting up on the side, on the 23rd of February, there was a signing of the state of Israel into a corporation. Now, when we have a corporation, we know that the company has assets, and the assets then become ownership of that corporation, depending on who the stakeholders are or the board of directors are. And if you look at that document, you can see that the Knesset is the owners of the corporation of the state of Israel. And so Israel becomes a business. It's no longer sovereign, right? It's now a corporation. It's no longer sovereign. And that's really important because the Jubilee is about sovereignty, the Jubilee is about debt cancellation, the Jubilee is about re-ownership of the land or taking back of the land. And here we can see that the state of Israel becomes a corporation whereby it's consolidated into the hands of few people, which is exactly what my dream described that the Lord gave me 2 months ago. And so the question remains, is that the land on the mount, does that belong to the corporation as well, or is the ownership of the land a front for the people who actually claim that it is theirs, i.e. the Arab people? So that's a question that I'll put out there, but I'm not actually going to answer. But the Lord is showing me the importance of this particular ownership of the state of Israel as a corporation, and the assets under that corporation belonging to a specific select few people, which is exactly what I dreamt 2 months ago. I do believe that in the coming years, because that dream does speak about how later on people will get to hear about how the land on the mount actually belongs to the Jewish people. And that does come after the Jubilee, and that's spoken about in the dream as well. So I thought that was very interesting. One last thing is the Lord highlighted to me the significance of Texas. Now remember, I said Texas is very significant. And what's come out of Texas? The red heifer. Texas is breeding red heifers for the Jewish people in preparation for the third temple. All these things are important to prophecy buffs and people who are following biblical prophecy. And so I pray this presentation has blessed you. I'll make a video separately on all the other important events that have happened around the 23rd in relation to inheritance and death. Thank you very much for watching. Shabbat Shalom.
That the reason I believe that this is going to occur is because it is my belief, Anons, that this process has already occurred. If we come over to the search engine known as Google and we type in these letters, OE027515, and we hit search, what comes up is a company with a registered company number by that number titled the State of Israel, all capitalized. This company is registered in Companies House in London at 2 Palace Green, London, United Kingdom, W84KB. This entity was registered on the 23rd of February of 2023, just earlier this year, incorporated in Israel under governing Israeli law, but the correspondence address is in London, the United Kingdom. If you come over to current officers, the current officers are not listed on this particular company, but the beneficial owner is identified as the Knesset. In other words, who benefits from the actions of the company's board and the company's officers? That would be the Knesset, and the Knesset's address is listed here in Ben Gurion, Jerusalem, Israel. And what's amazing is this body, the Knesset body, was notified that they would benefit from this arrangement on this date, 14 April 1948. So what we have here, Anons, this year is the full actualization, the full manifestation in real physical world form of the state of Israel's dissolution, the dissolution of the sovereign body that was the deep state stronghold of the Israeli government. It has now been brought underneath the central bank, Companies House, economic collapsing system, and will now be part of that collapse. Whereas prior to that incorporation, we could have collapsed all of NATO, all of the Western Central Bank model, and the Israeli government and economy would not have been affected. And that was purposeful and by design. So forcing them into the collapsing worldwide Western Central Bank model, bringing them into the Companies House, taking away the sovereignty of the Israeli government in the same fashion that the sovereignty of the United States was usurped in the Act of 1871, now makes them subservient and at the mercy to whatever occurs with the Federal Reserve dollar note, whatever occurs with the NATO central bank backed West, and whatever occurs with those economic and industrial systems, right? The state of Israel is now going to be absorbed into that collapsing process. Now, why is that significant? Because 7 months later, or excuse me, 8 months later, not even 8 months later, really 7 months later and a handful of days, we have the launch of these hostilities in Gaza. And what is occurring? The Israeli Defense Force is beginning to prepare a ground invasion into Gaza that has no serious objective. It doesn't really stand to benefit Israel other than to, ethnically cleanse the territory and destroy everything there. But it provokes a much larger worldwide response from the entire Arab nation. All of the Iranian-associated interest groups in all of the countrysides throughout the Middle East have discussed that that is their red line. The Houthi rebels in Yemen have already began firing rockets headed in the direction towards Israel for what they believe to be provocations. Excuse me. The Israeli Defense Force is readying a ground invasion into Lebanon as well in the north, and is already targeting is already striking targets via air raids and guided munitions in Lebanon and all of the way into Syria. Just today, Turkish President Erdogan came out and said that a solution to the conflict cannot be achieved without the creation of an independent Palestinian state with the borders of 1967, with its capital in East Jerusalem.